John D. Rockefeller. Now, there is a name that definitely smarts some strong reactions.
It really does. Ruthless capitalist, business visionary,
Yeah.
philanthropist. People see him very differently.
Exactly. And we're going to kind of step back from those labels today. Our deep dive is asking something else. What skills, specifically in understanding people and systems, his politics, and understanding what really fueled his, well, incredible rise?
Right. We're not here to judge him per se, but to look closely at his journey. We've broken it down into about 7 key stages.
Okay.
And the focus is really on how he read situations, understood complex operations, and, anticipated what was coming next, how that shaped his success.
And for you listening, the idea is to pull out some practical, maybe timeless lessons from this really complex historical figure.
Definitely.
Okay, let's dive in. Stage 1, the foundation of understanding. His early career. We're talking 1855, he's just 16, starting as an assistant bookkeeper.
Yeah. And even then, you see these flashes of that deep understanding.
How so?
Well, take school. He apparently wasn't like a naturally brilliant student,
Okay.
but he was incredibly diligent. He worked really hard. And that suggests an early grasp that, focused effort matters, maybe even more than raw talent sometimes.
That makes sense. And it wasn't just about schoolwork, right? I read he actually enjoyed the office processes.
He did. He got a kick out of all the methods and systems, which is pretty unusual for a teenager.
Yeah, definitely not typical.
And that translated directly into a specific skill, calculating transport costs. He quickly saw that the listed price wasn't the real price.
The rebate.
Exactly. He understood rebates, how they worked, how they created leverage. It wasn't just adding numbers. It was seeing the system behind the numbers.
So what did that get him in the real world back then?
Well, first off, that hard work landed him his first job on what he called Job Day, September 26, 1855. He always saw that day as crucial.
Right.
And he learned the basics, bookkeeping, good handwriting, banking fundamentals, the groundwork.
The unglamorous stuff.
The essential stuff. And that early grasp of logistics and pricing, that became a huge advantage later on.
So for someone starting a business today, what's the takeaway from that early period?
I think it's about really mastering the fundamentals. Don't dismiss the basics. Rockefeller's deep dive into something like shipping costs gave him an edge.
Uh-huh.
And persistence. He didn't get that first job instantly. He kept at it. That drive to find the opportunity is key.
Okay, let's shift gears. Section 2, mastering the competitive arena. His early oil business days and the start of consolidation. This is where things get intense.
Oh yeah, the intensity really ramps up here. As he moves into oil, you see his understanding of competition sharpen dramatically.
Like borrowing money to buy out partners.
Exactly. Right away, he borrows to take control of Cleveland's biggest refinery.
Yeah.
It wasn't just ambition, it was a calculated power play. Established dominance early.
And that was just the beginning, wasn't it?
Just the start. Then he systematically starts buying up rivals. But crucially, he also builds his own distribution, his own marketing.
Controlling the whole chain.
Right. Vertical integration, before we really called it that.
Yeah.
It gave him enormous power over supply.
Which brings us to the Cleveland Massacre. Sounds pretty brutal.
It was incredibly fast and decisive. In just a few months, 22 out of 26 competitors in Cleveland were gone, absorbed by Standard Oil.
How did he do it so quickly?
A mix of things. Strategic buyouts, sure, but also aggressive price cutting, making it impossible for smaller players to survive. And some very quiet behind-the-scenes deals.
He clearly understood their weaknesses.
Absolutely. And
Yeah.
he wasn't afraid to act on that understanding, swiftly, decisively.
The result being near total control.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Standard Oil ended up controlling something like 90% of U.S. refining and pipelines. That scale brought huge efficiencies, massive control over pricing. It reshaped the entire industry.
So for entrepreneurs today, maybe without the ruthless tactics, what are the strategic lessons here?
Deeply understand your competitive landscape. Know who's out there, their strengths, their vulnerabilities. Rockefeller was a master at that.
Right.
Also, recognize the power of controlling your value chain, especially distribution. And while the ethics are complex, his story highlights how decisive action and smart deal-making can consolidate your position, especially when the timing is right.
Let's pivot inward now, section 3. The power of composure and observation. His leadership within Standard Oil. It wasn't all external battles.
Not at all. Internally, he cultivated this almost eerie self-control. He was known for being calm, even friendly with employees, even when dealing with problems or complaints.
Flexible presence.
Exactly. It created stability. And he was incredibly observant. Did you hear about his nickname?
The sponge.
That's the one.
Yeah.
Because he just soaked up information. He'd walk the oil fields, talk to workers, listen to executives. He understood insights that come from anywhere, not just the top brass.
And what were the actual benefits of that style?
Well, the calm demeanor earned him respect. People felt he was fair. It built influence through quiet authority, not shouting. And the observation part, that gave him priceless operational intelligence. The famous story is him noticing workers using too much solder on oil cans.
Just a few drops per can.
Yeah, but multiply that by millions of cans, and it adds up to enormous savings. Small details, big impact. That came from watching, listening.
So for leaders building teams today,
Stay composed under pressure. It builds trust, helps you think clearly, and actively listen, really listen to everyone on your team. They often know where the problems and solutions are.
right?
And don't dismiss the small stuff. Those little observations can unlock big efficiencies.
Okay, now let's look outwards again. Section 4, navigating external relationships and privacy. He wasn't exactly an open book, was he?
Far from it. He was incredibly strategic about who he talked to and what he revealed, especially with competitors and the press. That famous poker face.
Hard to read.
Very. He kept people guessing, and getting access to him, that was notoriously difficult.
You couldn't just walk in.
Absolutely not. No unsolicited visits. Even for planned meetings, you often needed formal, written requests way ahead of time. He controlled access tightly.
And the press. He kept them at arm's length for a long time.
For decades, he genuinely believed familiarity bred contempt. He saw little upside in talking to journalists and a big risk of saying the wrong thing, revealing secrets.
What was the advantage of being so guarded, so reclusive?
It frustrated opponents. They felt like they were shadowboxing, trying to figure out his next move.
Yeah, I can see that.
Avoiding the press obviously minimized accidental leaks of business strategy, and especially early on, that silence created a kind of mystique, actually. He controlled the information flow by restricting it.
So, lessons for entrepreneurs today about managing external comms and privacy.
Think carefully about what you share and who gets your time and attention. Controlling information flow is still a strategic advantage.
Right.
And understand the downsides of too much public exposure, particularly when protecting your core strategies or intellectual property. It's a balance.
Okay, interesting contrast now. Section 5. The collaborative commander. How he handled things in the boardroom with his top people seems different from the public image.
It really is a crucial point.
Yeah.
While he was clearly the leader inside that inner circle, he actually fostered collaboration. He wouldn't always sit at the head of the table in meetings.
Really?
Yeah, sometimes he'd yield that spot, especially to directors he might be having a disagreement with. A subtle political move? Maybe.
And how did he get input? Did he just dictate?
No, quite the opposite. He made a point of asking others for their opinions before he gave his own.
That's smart.
Very. He'd often frame his ideas as suggestions, use we language, push for compromise. The goal was consensus on the big decisions.
What did that achieve within the leadership team?
It helped manage egos. Definitely. You had powerful, smart people around that table. This approach avoided clashes. Seeking different views likely led to better, more thought-out decisions. And when everyone agreed through consensus, you got real buy-in and commitment to making it happen.
Key lessons there for building an executive team.
Absolutely. Empower your people. Actively seek their input. Don't just pretend to listen.
Right.
Build consensus on the really critical stuff. It makes execution much smoother. And delegate strategically. It develops your team and frees you up.
All right, Section 6, the strategic innovator. This is about how Rockefeller didn't just compete in the oil industry. He fundamentally changed its structure and how it operated.
Exactly. This goes way beyond just winning market share. He had a long-term vision. He wanted to build something stable, lasting, not just make a quick buck in a chaotic market.
And he basically invented core corporate concepts.
He was a key figure in developing and actually implementing vertical integration, controlling everything from well to lamp and horizontal integration, consolidating competitors.
And the whole trust structure itself.
That was groundbreaking. It brought a level of organization and, frankly, stability to a wild boom and bust industry that just hadn't existed before.
And we touched on his efficiency focus earlier, but it was more than just solder drops, right? It was systematic.
Oh, completely systematic. Obsessive, even. He understood costs and profits at an incredibly detailed level. He knew that small leaks sink big ships, basically.
So that focus on tiny efficiencies scale up.
Scaled up across Standard Oil's massive operations, it translated into huge savings. That solder drop example is famous because it perfectly captures that mindset.
So looking at the big picture, what were the results of these structural innovations in this efficiency drive?
Well, you could argue he created the blueprint for the modern corporation. His structures brought order to chaos.
And prices.
Prices for consumers dropped dramatically. Kerosene became much cheaper, maybe by 80% during Standard Oil's peak. And of course, the company became immensely profitable through those efficiencies.
So for entrepreneurs looking at their own industries today,
Don't just accept the way things are done. Ask,
yeah.
can this industry be fundamentally restructured for more efficiency or stability?
Okay.
Really, really understand your costs, down to the smallest detail. And never stop looking for those small efficiency gains. They add up, especially as you grow.
Right. Finally, Section 7, Shaping Legacy. His later life, focusing on philanthropy and, well, managing his public image. Quite a shift from the early silence.
A massive shift. He started giving to charity relatively early, but as his wealth exploded, the scale of his philanthropy became unprecedented. He saw its potential beyond business.
And he approached giving with the same kind of strategic thinking.
Absolutely. He didn't just write checks randomly. He set up foundations, the Rockefeller Foundation being the most famous, designed his institutions to tackle huge problems systematically.
Focused on specific areas.
Yes, like medicine, education, scientific research. He wanted long-term impact, not just temporary relief.
And then after staying quiet for so long, he did start talking more publicly later on.
He did. Towards the end of his life, he allowed some managed publicity, even published memoirs. It was a clear effort to, shape the narrative, counter some of the negative robber baron image.
What were the long-term effects of that philanthropy and image management?
The philanthropy had undeniable, massive positive impacts. His foundations were key in huge public health wins, like practically wiping out hookworm in the U.S. South and fighting yellow fever. That strategic giving achieved things individual donations never could, and the later publicity. It probably helped create a more rounded picture, though the debate about his methods obviously continues.
So, wrapping this up, we've gone through these 7 stages, looking at Rockefeller's politics and understanding. From basic bookkeeping skills to reshaping an industry to shaping his own legacy.
Yeah, and while those business tactics, especially the early ones, are still debated,
Heavily.
his underlying ability to understand complex systems, human motivations, financial levers, that offer some really powerful lessons, even if they're sometimes uncomfortable.
What's really striking is how connected it all seems. Understanding accounting helped him understand rebates, which helped him build Standard Oil, which generated the wealth for the philanthropy.
It's all interwoven. His grasp spanned from tiny details like solder drops to huge structural changes to public perception. It makes you, the listener, think about just how broad that kind of deep understanding needs to be to really navigate and maybe even shape the world around you.
That's a great point to end on. Something for you to think about. Which of these strategies or insights struck you the most? How might they apply, maybe in a very different way, to what you're doing? This has been The Deep Dive. Thanks for joining us. John D. Rockefeller. Now, there is a name that definitely smarts some strong reactions.
It really does. Ruthless capitalist, business visionary, philanthropist. People see him very differently.
Exactly. And we're going to kind of step back from those labels today. Our deep dive is asking something else. What skills, specifically in understanding people and systems, his politics, and understanding what really fueled his, well, incredible rise?
Right. We're not here to judge him per se, but to look closely at his journey. We've broken it down into about 7 key stages.
Okay.
And the focus is really on how he read situations, understood complex operations, and, anticipated what was coming next, how that shaped his success.
And for you listening, the idea is to pull out some practical, maybe timeless lessons from this really complex historical figure.
Definitely.
Okay, let's dive in. Stage 1, the foundation of understanding. His early career. We're talking 1855. He's just 16, starting as an assistant bookkeeper.
Yeah. And even then, you see these flashes of that deep understanding.
How so?
Well, take school. He apparently wasn't like a naturally brilliant student.
Okay.
But he was incredibly diligent. He worked really hard. And that suggests an early grasp that, focused effort matters. Maybe even more than raw talent sometimes.
That makes sense. And it wasn't just about schoolwork, right? I read he actually enjoyed the office processes.
He did. He got a kick out of all the methods and systems, which is pretty unusual for a teenager.
Yeah. Definitely not typical.
And that translated directly into a specific skill, calculating transport costs. He quickly saw that the listed price wasn't the real price.
Ah, the rebate.
Exactly. He understood rebates, how they worked, how they created leverage. It